afternoon, everybody, and welcome. We're glad you can join us today for our October Curriculum Leaders Update meeting. I am Mary Treece. Anna, can you go to the next one, please? And I'm here to welcome you. We have a ton of Treece staff members here to give you lots of wonderful information. And don't forget, we are recording this. So if you can't stay for the whole time or you want to share this information, you will have the slides and the recording. We have a lot going on today. Mike Latfis is with us to do some legislative updates. We have Safe and Healthy Schools. We have Cindy to do state assessment updates. We have literacy, math, and social studies updates from our curriculum instruction team. MTSS, we have an invitation for you around MTSS, and we have our special education colleagues here. And then Beth is here along with Joe and Cindy, our assessment data team, to share the Wayne County Fall Data Review, which some of you may have heard. That's why we kind of put it at the end so that you can decide, but there's a ton of information there too, and you will have access to all of the slides. Next, please. As always, we archive and share our Wayne RISA update report here. So it's here. I will put the link in the chat so that you have access to it. I believe I also sent it out on the email list. Please share this widely with your teams and let us know if you have any questions surrounding anything here. Just real quick, we have an update for you. I think we shared this last year. We want to make sure that everybody is aware. We're adding 2 additional update meetings at the request of many of our curriculum directors, and these start next week. Registration is still open and there's no cost. These are virtual meetings. They're instructional update meetings. One is for elementary principals and one is for secondary principals. So we've had a lot of requests from our curriculum leaders saying, how do we get this information into the hands of our principals? So what we're going to do is curate some of this information, think about what's most applicable to building administrators, and we're going to use this as an avenue to share this information with them. There's no cost, but we would like your principals to register. We'll put the links in the chat to these flyers, so it'll be an easy way for you to share with your building principals. If they register, they can attend live and then have access to the recording and the slides, or if they can't make it, they will still have access to the recording and the slides. We need them to register though, so that we have them on our list and we can make sure that we email them that information. And that takes us right to Mike Latfis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kind of a meaty update for you guys today. Obviously, it's since we last spoke, we finally have a school aid budget, and that comes with a whole bunch of changes that need to be given consideration to, and all 3 months into your budget year, the school year. So I'm gonna try to go through this stuff relatively fast. I think. When I get the next slide after this one, I'll share a little bit more. But a lot, we're still kind of in the information gathering process on a lot of the stuff. There's probably some questions about different programs that were removed in the budget. I will share what answers I have for you, but certainly at least you probably know some of the highlights in this budget. But I figured I would share. At least on paper, for you guys to take a look at later. Obviously, we have the foundation allowance at $10,050. It is about $400 increase over the current year. The foundational, so that increase is going to look fairly different, and I'll get to that in a minute, from district to district. So again, we have kind of the legislature and the governor out there talking about record education funding. And because of some of the things that are in this budget that I'll run through, it doesn't really look like $10,050 when you get to the end of it. Obviously, we all saw that the school meals program was retained in this budget. There's a 4.6% increase in the weights, CTE, ISD operations, rural isolated districts. One of the biggest programs or biggest positive pieces of this budget include a 25% increase to at-risk and ELL. One of the downsides of this budget is districts' retirement costs are going up due to the removal and offset of kind of a combination of a removal of 147A, which was an offset that the state had been providing for districts to go towards retirement costs. as well as further increased costs due to normal cost increase that districts will see on the back end of things as well. There is an offset, and I know I'm getting into the weeds here a bit on retirement, but there is an offset on the healthcare portion of the retirement that they are providing. Um, there's a $100 million fund for school infrastructure program, $200 million for educator compensation reports, which I'll touch on in a few minutes here. School safety and mental health. It's a total of $321 million. You will continue to hear me talk about it as a cut to school safety and mental health. That is primarily because there's $214 million in one pot, and then 53 and a half each into other pots. That first pot is actually getting divvied up a little bit. $14 million of it is going to private schools, which is the first time that they are doing this. The essentially $200 million will be going out on a per pupil basis for school safety and mental health for this school year. Again, this is a cut in the sense that last year we received about 325 million that went out strictly on a per pupil basis. So districts will be receiving about the 200 million piece of that, and then we'll have the ability to apply for these two separate grant programs to hire mental health professionals or school resource officers. The part of the problem with this is in the boilerplate language for those programs, it does say that the department should prioritize those districts applying that can demonstrate the ability to be able to fund this on their own moving forward. So again, this represents a cut to school safety and mental health, and it also represents to me a backing away from full funding of school safety and mental health, at least what they have been providing over the last couple of years. Part of that is, I think, their inability to actually fund it, and I'll get to some of my concerns about this budget in a second here. And then finally, we have the $75 million, which is an increase for before and after school programs. There's certainly much more in this budget. They're just some of the highlights that I chose to kind of put together. Those are initially at 8 o'clock at night when I got this information when the budget was passed is what I shared with the superintendent. So sharing that with you guys. Concerns about the budget. An additional $400 million has been transferred from the school aid fund to higher ed. That was done to free up general fund money in order to pay for this roads deal. And I'll talk to that about that second. That brings the school aid transfers to about $1.4 billion, I think just under $1.4 billion. I already mentioned about the removal of some of the retirement offsets, which are going to increase districts' retirement costs by about 2 to 3% on average. Obviously, that's going to impact each district differently. And then finally, as I mentioned, we're very concerned that the door that has already been opened in terms of sending money to private schools is getting kicked in even farther with money being added for the school safety program and a little bit for the school meals program as well. Overall, the primary concerns that we have are looking into over at least the next 2 years, because that's what I can see it right now when I look at the balance sheets. And as I say on the slides here, the roads deal that they passed has blown a hole in the state budget. Next year's general fund budget it has an operating deficit of about $325 million. And the following year, we're looking at $750 million plus in terms of a deficit. What could really put even more of an impact on the school aid budget is, as part of the roads deal, I'm sure you all heard about the increase in the wholesale tax on marijuana that is set to bring in a little over $400 million. There was always concern that the way that they passed that which was on a simple majority, was unconstitutional because it was a citizen-initiated referendum. The belief was that the legislature needed a 2/3 majority in order to change that. So the state is already being sued, and what happens if when they're successful? The concern is they're going to have this $400 million on top of that $300 million. They're going to have this $400 million hole. And right now in our budget, in the school aid budget, they set aside about $385 million. Maybe it was a little less. I mean, it might have been 365. I'm not remembering off the top of my head. In a school aid reserve fund. And if if the past tells us anything, what they're likely going to do if that happens is try and send more money to higher ed in order to free up some of the general fund money that higher ed is currently receiving in order to pay for this roads deal. So again, blows a gigantic hole in our budget, in the state's budget, and is pushing us to a financial cliff. And we're essentially building the roads on the backs of our students. I am, you know, next year's budget is going to be much different than this and the previous year's budgets. The just outside of what I mentioned of what the balance sheet is showing for the general fund, the September fiscal report put out by the Senate Fiscal Agency indicated that the school aid fund was up by about $75 million over the projections that they had estimated in May. The general fund is already down 275 million. So it's not a good picture fiscally moving forward, and we're going to have to be making some extremely tough choices moving forward next year. And the conversation that you're probably going to start hearing a lot more of, because they clearly had that conversation this year, is the school meals program staying? Is school safety money staying? Is some of this other money that's in this budget staying, or is it going to have to be dialed back? So um, I'm usually always doom and gloom, but this time I'm very pessimistic looking forward of just from a fiscal standpoint of this budget. Can we go to the next slide, please? So all of the questions, I mean, I have gotten a few questions about funding for people, but all of the questions that I've got have focused on the different boilerplate changes. Obviously, being 3 months into a school year, that would where people would have the most questions, just based off of the fact of, have we been doing something that is now not would put us out of compliance with the state budget that's followed in law. What are the timing issues on all of these things? What I've shared with all the superintendents is that we need to kind of treat this like we treated the executive orders at the federal level back last spring, where we have to take time. I know it's hard to do because you're already 3 months into your school year, and this was the frustration that we were focusing on the legislature on. But we need to gather all the information on a number of these different areas before we can actually provide some finality in terms of the guidance that we will have. Some of that is centering on legal guidance, guidance from insurance agencies, and finally guidance from MDE. I will say, in general, MDE has recognized that the difficult position I think that this budget is putting districts in, and has indicated that they are not in a rush to get out any new guidance or require districts to do certain things unless there's a timeline attached. So again, we do have time. I know everyone wants answers immediately, and it's one of those things where I think certainly on a few of these items that we need to gather all the information that we can before decisions are made. Real quickly, because I don't have a slide on it, there was a change in Section 81, which is ISD operations, which requires ISDs to partner with and host meetings with their LEAs and PSAs. Wayne Risa has been doing that, and nothing is going to change in that matter. But I'm just putting that on there as that was a major boilerplate change. Our next meeting with our LEAs and PSAs is actually on Monday. Yeah, Monday next week. So that's just a change that we put in there. You can go on the next slide, please. Section 21F, virtual days. Sorry, the slides when I copied and pasted them over here must have gotten a little format change, so shouldn't be that close to the title. But virtual days. Obviously, I think if you've seen in the budget, the allowance for districts to have virtual days went from 15 to 0 for really every option that has been out there. There were questions where this came from. My understanding, this was a request from the outgoing state superintendent, and it is causing a fair amount of concern and problems for districts moving forward. We had a district in Wayne County who actually had a virtual day after this budget was signed. And it was questioning of whether or not they're going to get dinged from the department. We have spoken with the department on this, and they have indicated they aren't going to penalize a district that had a virtual day, and certainly one that was scheduled prior to the prior to the budget being enacted and negotiated. But there is a question of what to do moving forward. Um, we have a number of districts who are using virtual days for testing or PD days. I do have we do have one district I know last year that had to use 3 virtual days because DTE could not provide power to their buildings. So kind of in an emergency situation. So I think the department understands this is an issue. They understand that there are valid reasons for why we need to keep virtual days. I don't believe we're going to get, we're going to make a change in next year's budget or in a potential supplemental that'll bring us back to 15. But overall, we are waiting right now from guidance from the department. I know that there's an email going around that says from a staff member at MDE that says the department isn't going to do anything about this year. I would encourage all the superintendents that an email from a staffer within the department is not department policy. So until we see guidance on a specific issue on MDE letterhead, to not take anything into consideration. I have spoken with MDE. They currently have some questions out to the attorney general on this section to see what flexibility they can have. I have encouraged them to have the state superintendent, create a waiver for this year. But again, we'll see exactly what they decide. And I know at least I put out a survey to the superintendents. It sounds like most people have these dates planned next spring. So we do have a little bit of time here moving forward on this section. Go ahead, next slide, please. 27L, the Educator Compensation Fund. As I mentioned, there is $203 million, I believe, in this fund for educator compensation to increase compensation for educators in the district. Excuse me. The language requires the district to bargain any increases in compensation under this section, and those increases must be in addition to any existing compensation negotiated with collective bargaining agreement. So essentially, these are going to be stipends. They do include the definition for what an educator is. This is one of the questions that we continue to have out to our legal team that we hope to get back soon, which is the words includes but is not limited to. Can read different ways to people. I've already heard districts saying that we're going to give this means that I can give a stipend to every single person in my district, or I've heard this means that this is only people in bargaining units would fall under this provision. So I guess I'm grateful that they did include an actual definition, because we went down this rabbit hole a couple years ago for I think that was the teacher bonuses, where they did not define what the word was. But there is this question about what does includes but not limited to mean. So we have more information, or we're seeking more information out on that. If we can go to the next slide. What I've been sharing, obviously, I just walked through what the definition of educator is. I said that this is going to be stipends because this is one-time funding. This is not ongoing funding, so you can't increase actual salaries off of this. And I have shared with our superintendents that there is language, and mostly just to keep on their radars, is that there is intent language in the boilerplate in Section 18D that says that the increase that districts receive in the foundation allowance should go towards permanently increasing compensation for staff. Intent language has no bearing in law, but it is there, and we're just making sure that with districts being required to bargain this fund, that is on their radar. So again, more to come on this as well. Next slide, please. 31A, at-risk parental notification. This is one of the ones where we have some questions into MDE. I've had some initial conversations with them, but we're still waiting guidance on when districts will be required to do this. For this, at some point this year, it is not specific in terms of when it has to be done. A district receiving these funds through the opportunity index formula must provide a report to parents or legal guardians that details the amount of funding received under the allocation, how the district distributed the funding and a way to target buildings with highest needs, and what evidence-based interventions were implemented with those dollars. The report must include a method, including contact information with parents and legal guardians to provide feedback on the use of these dollars, as well as seek out more information about service interventions available for children. My conversations with MDE have stated that first glance, they don't think that this probably has to be done until sometime in April, May, sometime towards the end of the year. But we're again waiting to see more guidance on confirmation of that. Next slide. Another fun one that I know a number of superintendents have been concerned about, and this is another one where we continue to seek legal and other guidance on this. The school safety language in 31AA was changed this year to require that a district sign a waiver to be subject to a comprehensive investigation, agreeing to waive any privilege. So think attorney-client privilege between a district and a board and the superintendent and their attorney, and comply with this comprehensive investigation that is essentially a state investigation, and the decision will be made on who will lead an investigation by the governor at that time, and walk through all of the different pieces within this language. Next slide, please. Part of the many concerns we have with this language is the definition of a mass casualty event. As you'll read through the subsection in of 1, 2, 3, and 4, I mean, essentially, you could have the way that this is being detailed to us by attorneys is that you could have a bus accident where 3 individuals or more were injured, and that could trigger this investigation. You could have a fight at a football game where 3 or more people were injured, and that could trigger an investigation. So this is much more than a mass casualty event. This is a very broad definition that will likely not only impact districts from a legal perspective, but also from an insurance perspective, and is probably a dangerous precedent in the way that it's written in this area. Can you go to the next slide, please? Sorry. The things to consider as I've shared this information with superintendents and kind of our legal insurance implications. Will eventual rate increases outpace school safety and mental health funding? As I mentioned, the funding has already kind of been cut back to about $200 million, and I am not confident that it is going to be able to be maintained in the years moving forward. And if from what we have initially heard from insurance companies is that signing this waiver and accepting this money would not immediately increase districts' insurance rates. Immediately is probably the key word there. I think at some point there will likely be eventual increases. And what makes this even more dangerous is what happens if an increase if you get an investigation like where there's a fight on a football field or a football game, right? We have some districts that are receiving about $100,000 out of this fund, and at what point does this become more problems than it is helpful in terms of actually accepting money? So that's a problem. Waiving privilege, obviously, That is a current concern both on the legal side and on the civil side in terms of eventual lawsuits, because if you waive privilege and every single communication and every single document is between attorneys and districts are made are made available, you make lawsuits that more easy to be successful against districts. Um, there's there's still, I think there's still a question of whether or not this signing this waiver is signing away rights of staff to participate in an investigation. But I still think that there are implications for signing this, and staff, and prosecutors going to a staff member and saying that potentially saying that your district signed this waiver, you have to participate. I already mentioned the definition of mass casualty event. There's a question of how long does this waiver last? That is not indicated in this language. PR implications. If you say this isn't worth $100,000 in some of our districts to actually go through this, um, do you have the ability to continue to pay for your existing supports? And obviously, the other PR backlash of you not wanting to participate in an investigation. Sorry, coughing sinuses. I've been encouraging districts to involve their boards in the conversation and decision-making process. And as it relates to timing, MD is required to get this funding out by December 31st. My understanding is that we're probably not going to see any sort of funding application, including a waiver, until December, probably sometime in the beginning of December, end of November. So districts have time to continue gathering all the information from a legal perspective, from insurance perspective, and make their own individual decision. So, what I will share is one of the things that I am actively doing is I am encouraging, and it sounds like the department agrees, at least initially, that this waiver, if signed, is only for this school year. Um, the I see people have some questions, um, and kind of indicating that, or at least this school year, or it'll probably be for this budget year. So saying that this waiver would go through September 30th of 2026 and then end. So that's what I can share on 31AA for now. Stacy, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Stephanie put in the chat, because as soon as you said that, those of us that were at the webinar on Monday, the state said you had to opt in by November 12th. And if you opted in, that basically was your obligation date. They don't want you opting in. And then when the application actually goes live in December, making a decision then.
Mhm.
So they basically told us you have to make a decision by November 12th. And Stephanie, feel free to chime in because that's what I heard on Monday
Who's
from them.
It
who
was
is they?
that was the MDE webinar.
MDE.
Right, who at MDE?
It was Jack Gerard and that whole team, the mental health and safety people that
Okay.
oversee the grant.
And
I
it didn't
will.
even, Stacy, I'm not even sure if there was a budget because they said they were just going to put the money in state aid after we said, yes, we were opting in and agreed to all the assurances in GEMS.
Okay. I will check in with I spoke with their legislative liaison on Monday, and what I will say is that some MDE staff are saying things that they shouldn't be saying yet, or have not officially been decided yet. I will share that I know that Dr. Colbert had coffee with the interim superintendent on Friday, and that was not indicated in that meeting. So again, until we see something specific actually on paper, I get that they're saying this. I mean, I get that they're saying that in a webinar, and it very well may be the case. But until we actually see it on paper, I would take it all with a grain of salt at this point.
They did say they were supposed to have everything up, I believe, today, including the recording and the FAQs, because that was literally one of the
Yeah.
questions I asked. Can we opt in, but then not take the money? And they basically said no.
That's not how this. I mean that. Yeah, I'm skeptical of that. I'm not saying that you guys are. I'm not saying that that's not what they said. But that would be news to me and everyone else that has been working on this issue, at least with kind of the folks at the department.
I think one of the
Who-
things that why they said that is that they had to calculate the per pupil based on the number of people said yes, so that they could get the funds out by, which was legislated for December 31st.
Yep.
December 31st. Yep. Yeah. Well, I will ask. I'll make a phone call and see if that's true. But my understanding is that waiver they haven't even started on that waiver yet. So, and I know they have questions out to the Attorney General's office on this. So, that seems pretty fast for MDE to make that decision. And I guess certainly if their legislative liaison doesn't know, and the state superintendent doesn't know, but I will try and track that down. But there was another. Oh no, that was the question in the chat.
There was
guess-
a question, Mike.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to wait to the end. Is there any discussion about budget being tied to CPRO production from the NDE future list posted January 26th, or a decrease pay of 5%?
Can I ask a question?
Thanks.
Yeah. Section 164K, the school meals requirement. This 164K was initially the RFK, Make America Healthy Again, language that would require districts not to have stuff in their food like red dye and blue dye and all these other things. And at the last minute, that changed. And this is still within Section 22B funding, and there's a bunch of weird requirements that is basically labeled school meals requirements in the summary. One of the first ones that I'll just speak to is B, where it says that to the extent practical under federal regulations, a district or ISD shall require each student household to complete the child nutrition and education benefits application as provided by the department. Part of my frustration, and again, I've mentioned this before, is that when they go fast, when they don't consult us in the legislature, they have no clue what they're doing and they create problems. Had someone in the legislature taken the time to do a quick Google search, they would have found that the USDA's eligibility manual restricts districts from requiring families to fill this out. So this is one of the requests that I have to legal. I'm going to try. For B here is that we just need to continue doing what we've been doing on this issue. C is one of those ones that we're going to need a little more guidance from MDE on, that you can. If you're purchasing candy, or if you're purchasing, throwing a pizza party, is that a financial incentive? My guess is it's not, but I guess we need to double check and make sure. So that's a question we have out to MDE as well, and are waiting on their guidance. D is kind of as well. Any student survey that districts ask students to fill out need to be made available to the public. The results posted on the district's website, and that parents and legal guardians are notified of the survey. A lot of questions here, obviously. I mean, we have, I know in elementary school, you ask if a student's going to, you poll a classroom of whether a student's going to have hot lunch or not. And is that considered a survey? And do we got to post that? Do we got to let parents know? Do you have to let parents know before you survey? That's a question. A lot of questions on this that I know we're going to be waiting for MDE to provide some sort of guidance on. And then just to answer the question, yes, there is that language in there that says if a district is not using curriculum from the department's evidence-based curriculum list required under Section 1280F, they would lose 5% of this funding. I know, it's pretty self-explanatory what it is kind of laid out in the language. It is there. We're waiting to hear from MDE on how they are going to address that. Certainly for this year, based on the sense that you guys, if you aren't using, excuse me, one of those curriculum, you wouldn't have known about this until you're three months into your budget year. Had you known about it, you probably would make a different decision. My guess is there's going to be some sort of waiver provided by the department on this, but again, that's something that we are waiting on. Can you go to the next slide? So when you get this, I did include the link to the USDA eligibility manual where it specifically pointed out to two separate areas. So did that help answer the question, Liz? Great. That's all I have for you guys. I think I've painted a pretty bleak picture for next year in this current budget. There's a lot that we are diving into on this stuff, and I'm going to stay on and actually get you guys an answer on 31AA stuff, and hopefully jump in at some point just to provide that answer. But I'm happy to answer any questions for now.
If there are no questions for Mike, I'll go ahead and share a couple of quick updates. On the next slide, you'll see information about the 31N application being open. We opened that application on October 7th. It will close on November 14th. So this is the funding that allows districts to apply to hire general education, mental health, school health professionals to deliver services to students that are not receiving those services through an IEP. Any of our LEAs and PSAs can apply for this funding. The funding year is October 1st, 2025 through September 30th. However, this funding you're allowed to use for two years following the fiscal year in which the funding was made available. In Wayne County, we've made the decision to stick with a $600,000 maximum ask per district. And just reminders that this funding requires a 20% hard match on the award amount, as well as full participation in our Medicaid billing and reimbursement program. The question around supplanting, so there is a special consideration here because we've never had enough 31N6 funding for all districts to have access. And so the department does allow us to consider staff that was hired on or after October 1st of 2019 as to either to continue supporting that staff or put somebody else in a position that existed on or that was created on or after that date. That is not considered supplanting with this particular funding source. We had one Q&A session yesterday. There's another one coming up on November 6th. So if you have specific questions, you can reach out to me before then or join us for the Q&A or both. There's a link here for both the application and a PDF version of the application so that you can review the information that is required ahead of opening up the Google form application. On the next slide, I have a couple of links here. You may be aware that we have some new health education standards that are being proposed for Michigan. The health education standards haven't been updated since 2007. They address many new issues that were not issues at the time of the issuing of the last set of standards. So we've got the draft there. We also have a statement from MDE. Despite broad support from our professional organizations that are connected to education, there are some pieces of misinformation that have been floated and are concerning some parents. They revolve primarily around issues to parents' ability to review materials connected to sex ed, parents' ability to opt out their students, and additions of some LGBTQ gender identity type content. All of the rules around parents' ability to review materials, opt their students out, remain in place, and the new content around LGBTQ, gender identity, etc., that is within the sex education content. And so that same ability for parents to opt their students out to review the materials is in place, and that will not be changing. We will be working on some additional resources that might be helpful to you besides the two that are linked here. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about the proposed revisions, please feel free to reach out to Jamie E. Thorne, our school health consultant, and her email address is there. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Moving into some state assessment updates, I'm Cindy Taraskevich. The state did release and update the new revised calendar for state testing for the spring 2026. You can see the revised PSAT and SAT 4 weeks instead of the 3 weeks. And they have all the important dates released, so you can find your WIN, your M-STEP, your SAT, and the updated 3-year assessment schedules for the next 3 years, all in that link right there for the important dates. Next slide. The state and WIN, the WIN vendor, they just held a webinar last week, so we are getting some information about the new assessment. We know that access to the WIN portal is anticipated for January. The test management and test platform will be on the same platform itself. Access for test coordinators will go through OEA contacts. That OEA contacts is updated through your EEM. So again, it's imperative that you're updating the EEM to make sure the contact information is updated for all of your test coordinators. Your test coordinators will assign testing staff just as you do with the test day toolkit. There will be no establishment or managed participation process for WIN like you had to do with work keys. Everything will be done right through the pre-ID and OEAA. You can test any section in any order on any day. You do not have to do it all in one sitting like we do have to do for the SAT. There will be student tutorials, there will be test tickets with logins and passwords, headphones are not required, and there will be an online embedded calculator, but handheld calculators can be used. So this is some of the information that we're getting with the brand new assessment. The link to the webinar slides, the PowerPoint is there, and they have the important dates again released. They are coming out with an accommodations webinar. I don't have the date or the link for that yet. Next slide. Some College Board updates. The intent to test window opens up October 27th. That runs through November 19th. So most schools are auto-established. If your EEM is updated and you have tested at least 5 students in the assessment in the last 2 years, then you're automatically auto-established to test for the spring testing. All other schools who are not auto-established will receive an email asking for their intent to test. Make sure you're checking your junk email. If they're not in your contact list, it usually goes there. There have been some updates for some EL supports for your SSD side. One is your EL text-to-speech for math. That's brand new. And then EL math test only. That is not brand new, but this year it is with a college reportable score. So in the past, students could take the math only section as an EL support, but they did not get a college reportable score with it. This time, it is now a college reportable score. And then again, they did release some important dates, but I pulled out some of the important ones here. Just again, pre-ID will open January 5th. Your access to test day toolkit, February 2nd. Your access to that state data management is February 16th. And then the last day to do accommodations and support is February 17th. That SSD is open now, so you can go in and start doing accommodations and checking supports. Next slide. The benchmark assessment reimbursement, since the budget was passed, there is money to renew for benchmark assessment reimbursements for the 25-26 school year. There are no significant changes from the previous year. They remain optional, but they are strongly encouraged, except when funding is requested, then they are not optional. There is a total again of 11.5 million. It will be that pot, and then they'll see who applies and how many applies, and then do the disbursement. So districts will submit an application in Nexus later this fall. Some of the requirements, again, these have not changed. You administer the benchmark within the first 9 weeks of the school year. And in the spring, last year, they did define the spring term. That is the last marking period through June, that June deadline. You have to use the same assessment in both fall and spring. You have to report assessment data and the mode of instruction through the data hub within 30 days of both fall and spring. Share student scores with parents and guardians within 30 days of fall and spring administration. And then again, submit the report and funding application in Nexus. I don't have a link for that or a date. There is a webinar tomorrow with MDE in the data hub, 1 to 2 o'clock. So the registration link is there if you would like to join. It's still open. Next slide. And then Wayne Risa, we are hosting sessions with iReady and NWEA now that you have your fall data, what to do with that data. So there is a SMORE with the registration link and all the details in the SMORE, and then the registration link is also there. And then we have the dates here. There are 4 sessions to choose from for iReady on November 5th. And then there are 2 dates to choose from on October 28th for NWEA. We tried to stagger for new users and experienced users. So those are available so that you are digging into your data and using your data from that fall benchmark. And I think that's all I have. Next slide. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? No? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Fromm. I'm one of the literacy consultants, and I just wanted to share a couple of upcoming events that are happening. First, we know that some of you had some difficulty getting into the 2-day foundational training. We've added in another training for December 1st and 2nd. So if you are interested, please get signed up. Matt is dropping the link in the chat. Also, we're offering some free virtual trainings. So on November 4th, there are 3 different trainings, one for administrators, one for some step refreshers, and one for how to use UFly to differentiate instruction. All of those are free and they are virtual, and they are run by the University of Florida's Literacy Institute. We've been asked if we can record those, and the answer to those is no. That is the University of Florida's policy. If you're not available on November 4th, we are also offering them after school, starting in November through January. Each one of them will be repeated a second time. Next slide, please. Also, we have another learning opportunity called Building Strong Comprehension Strategies for Engaging the Elementary Reader. It's based on the book by Dave and Meredith Lieben called Know Better, Do Better Comprehension. It's December 2nd. It's all day long. And if you are interested, please, or have teachers that might be interested, we invite you to sign up for that. Next slide, please. Finally, there are some other, or not finally, there's some other virtual class offerings that we have that are available from now until June, and they really target those students in grades 4 through 9. It's based, the 4 courses are based on the recommendations from the IES practice guide called Providing Reading Interventions for Students in Grades 4 through 9. All of the practices that are talked about are really appropriate, not just for intervention, but for all students. So those, each of those courses are available until June, and they are an hour and a half for sketches. Next slide, please. And finally, we still have a couple of spots available in the dyslexia awareness PD. That is November 25th. We're going to talk about dyslexia and what it is and how it impacts learning. diving into PA 146, Michigan's dyslexia law, so people understand exactly what is required, and then practical strategies to support students. So again, there's a couple spots left, and we invite you to join in with that. I think that is all I have. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or let me know right now.
Okay, we have some secondary updates as well. And if you have any questions, Jeff Austin is the literacy consultant who you will want to contact, and his name and contact information is on this screen. I'm going to go ahead and share this information on his behalf. The first thing is we are partnering with Thinking Pro and American Institute for Research to find some OER type of curriculum for secondary. And they do have a unit already launched that we think is really worth looking at. They're working on getting into what's Work Clearinghouse. It's a free resource. We had a webinar if you were not able to attend, or if you have secondary instructors that you would like to learn more about this, the webinar recording is there. You'd have to use that password, but you will have access to all of that information. Next, please. And we're asking you to save the date. We're going to do another big launch, or I guess beyond the launch now. We're getting to implementation with disciplinary literacies in action, place, problem, and project-based learning. Save the date. We're looking at the spring, May 28th. This will be a bit of a follow-up to the Diverse History Summit, which was place-based, but this conference will incorporate all three areas: place, problem, and project-based learning. So save the date. We'll be sending more information about that, but we want to make sure you get that on your calendars. It's going to be especially relevant for your secondary staff. And it goes to John Ferris.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Ferris, Social Studies Consultant here at Wayne Risa. I want to share a few bits of information with you. First off, a recent survey was conducted here in Michigan by a professor at Oakland University and one at Grand Valley University, surveying over 1,000 Michigan teachers, asking them how much social studies is happening and how is it being done in K through 5. And sadly, the result they found was not much. Very little social studies is happening in K through 5, especially K through 4. Next slide. And what we found, the reason why this is happening, as you can imagine, is emphasis is being put on literacy and math, while other things such as science, social studies, and non-core subjects are getting marginalized. And very often people feel that they need to spend more time on literacy and that social studies would be taking time away from literacy. But this is a false choice, and I'll show you why. Next slide. Need to give that a click. Thanks. A recent study by the Fordham Institute found that social studies, increasing social studies instruction had a greater impact on literacy than increasing English language arts instruction. And their methodology was to increase each of those subjects by 20 minutes of instruction a day and see what changes happened in literacy scores for elementary students. And what they found was increasing 20 minutes of English language arts had very little effect, partly because that's being done if you're doing 2 hours a day anyway, another 20 minutes probably isn't a major step. But adding another 20 minutes of social studies caused a 15-point deviation in the literacy scores. Next slide. In fact, they stated that social studies is the only subject with a clear, positive, and statistically significant effect on reading improvement. In contrast, extra time spent on ELA instruction had no significant relationship with reading improvement. And the reason for this that they found is that, as I said, for one thing, there's already a lot of ELA instruction happening very often, and so increasing that by 20 minutes didn't necessarily have a big change. But when there's not much happening in social studies, 20 minutes of that is a major change. And the reason why it supports literacy is because of background knowledge and complex texts that are happening. Without background knowledge, students can't understand what it is they're reading, though they might be able to decode the words. Next slide. So what I'd like to offer is please share this information with your team. Invite me to your next meeting or your next professional development for your staff, and I'll be happy to share this information as well as brainstorm ways that they can support literacy with social studies in elementary. Next slide. One click. And also recently, I've been getting a lot of calls from districts asking me for help in adopting new social studies curriculum and curriculum resources. If you'd like help in adopting high quality instructional materials for social studies, please give me a call. I've got a lot of resources that I can share with you. I can even help facilitate that process and help your team meet their goals in adopting resources. Next. And I'd like to invite all of your teams to attend our Social Studies Inquiry Design Collaborative. This is an ongoing collaborative throughout the school year. We already had our first session in September. It was very well attended. And I was very happy to see entire teams coming from different districts to participate in this. And what teachers will learn in this series is how to use inquiry in social studies classrooms. A lot of teachers aren't aware of the C3 framework of social studies methods, what is best practice right now, or the fact that inquiry is specified in the new Michigan 2019 state social studies standards as the method that we should be using with students. So you can register for each of those sessions individually. Our next one is on November 20th, and you can attend as many or as few of those as you like. Next. And lastly, if you're not already on our social studies listserv, please sign up for that so you can get announcements like the ones I've just shared, as well as opportunities for professional learning and new resources. I've got the listserv divided up by grade band and subject area, so your kindergarten teacher won't get spammed with AP US history emails and vice versa. And that's all I have. Thank you, everyone.
So I will go ahead and share the math updates. And if you have any questions about what I'm going to share, you can reach out to Dr. Christy Hamby, and her contact information was on that slide. We're really excited about this opportunity. We're going to be hosting a viewing of the film Counted Out, Math is Power. This is significant because it's really about who's being left out of mathematics instruction and what impact does it have on their lives ultimately. I'll make sure that that's clickable. And the s'more that has the advertisement has a little video clip on it that you might find compelling to watch. There, Matt's putting it in the chat right now. We're offering this at no cost. There's going to be movie snacks and we're going to have a panel interview, which we think is significant. But if you want to really think hard about the future of what we're doing with mathematics and why we need to shift what we're doing, you'll find this compelling and inspirational. We hope you plan to join us. We're doing 2 showings, one at 1:30 in the afternoon and one at 4:30 in the afternoon. If you have any questions, let me know or Dr. Hamby.
All right, and I am John Chopin. I'm one of the elementary math consultants here at RESA, and I'm here to share a couple of math updates related to elementary spaces. So I know we already heard a lot about legislative updates today. What we didn't already hear is that the early math funding was cut and was not included this time around in the budget. And so there's been some conversations about what that looks like and what that means. One of the big things to know is some of the early math events, like there was a meaningful fact fluency event that we advertised that was scheduled for December, is not happening through early math any longer. And so any of the math specific events that were running for free through the state are currently canceled, although they're looking for alternatives for that. They're hoping that events like learning labs and instructional rounds can be supported through collaboration with literacy. And then if you are a district that has partnered with 35A in the early math systems work this year, you'll be receiving communication soon about what that means for you. But just as a general update, we're all very disappointed to have the early math funding cut because there's been a lot of meaningful things that Wayne County educators have attended in the last few years connected to it, including the big CGI event that happened in Washtenaw that we had a huge representation of Wayne County in. And we were hoping to have more momentum to continue that. Next slide, please. Sorry, I think there's a couple clickable things on there, Mary. I didn't realize that. So Math Recovery has rebranded. They are no longer the Math Recovery Council. They're now Integro Numeracy Solutions. New brand, same mission, really focused on getting the research out there and supporting children's learning in mathematics and thinking around mathematics. So we are making the shifts at RISA as well. Math Recovery has taken AVMR 1 and AVMR 2 and split them into 3 courses. We are hoping to provide support once we have more knowledge for teachers that are already AVMR 1 and AVMR 2 trained for the new coursework as well as to what that means and what shifts that have occurred. But we're still in the learning process. We're hoping that we can launch the foundational courses A and B that are replacing AVMR 1 and part of AVMR 2 as early as this summer. So if you start getting emails from things called Integro Numeracy Solutions and you were previously invested in Math Recovery, it's the same thing, just with new branding and updated courses. So thanks for your time. There was a question
Dawn,
about something related to the math coach work.
I can address that one, Dawn.
Yeah.
The question is about math coaches that are being funded for 25, 26. They are going to continue to be funded.
Mhm.
Those coaches are actually funded from the Wayne County Executive Office funding that we've been able to acquire and not through state funding. So we will continue with that. And Stacy, I think Stacy Vesprimi, either one that asked the question. Also, early math specialists, if you have an early math specialist, which I believe you do, Stacy, that will
Yeah.
continue to be funded because that's actually through 23H. So that was not impacted. It's only 35A, which affected some of the state math work that was happening through MESA. Also, while I have you, I would like to introduce one of our new colleagues who's going to speak to you next with an invitation, and that is Dr. Sandra Brock, who is our new instruction assessment and MTSS consultant.
Yes, thank you, Mary. As Mary said, I'm new to RISA actually on day 6, but joined a great organization. So previously I was in Wayne Westland for over a decade and Northville, so I see many familiar faces. And if I don't know you, I look forward to meeting you. This is really an open invitation to either curriculum directors, or if you're in a district where maybe some other team or other person oversees MTSS, we're going to have a coffee and conversation around all things MTSS. So what is tier 1? What are those universal supports? And then what does tier 2 and tier 3 look like in terms of, intense support or targeted intervention? So it will be November 10th. We're asking that you sign up. We already have over 10 folks coming, and we'd love to hear more about what you're doing, as well as provide guidance that we're hearing from the state and other entities. So that is it. And let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Kate Pearson. I'm the Essential Elements Consultant here at Wayne RISA, and just here to provide you with a couple of special education updates. I'm hoping to bring a smile to your face with this slide, because I know it did mine when I was creating it for all of you today. We're really excited. We have Teach Town going on in across 18 different districts. With about 4,100 different students, with around 600 different teachers within our non-diploma Act 18 programs. And Teach Town helped provide coaching sessions across a 2-week period to around, I think they got to about 15 of our districts. And we were really excited to provide that one-on-one instructional coaching. And while I couldn't be at every session, I was able to attend many of the coaching sessions and took a couple of snapshots of our students with our most complex learning needs, really interacting with high quality curriculum and instructional resources. And if you can kind of see across the different images, we have students that are using technology to support their learning, whether it was Chromebooks or iPads. We also saw lessons being conducted using the clever touch boards, the smart boards that are often at the focal points in our classrooms. We had students using manipulatives, adaptive and differentiated worksheets, visual supports, differentiated materials, and it's really exciting, because I'm going to tell you, as a previous educator not too long ago, these classrooms didn't have these materials and resources supporting these students with complex learning needs. So we're really excited about it. These coaching sessions will continue throughout this year. There'll be a winter cohort and a spring cohort, but I just wanted to share, and if you are a part of a district that has Act 18 programs and you have Teach Town, please take a few minutes to go reach out to those classrooms, maybe stop in and just see the great work that our educators are doing for our students with our with the most unique complex learning needs. So just really excited about it. Wanted to bring some happiness to the meeting. Next slide. And then I'm going to end with just highlighting some upcoming professional development opportunities that are on the rise within our special education department. These are kind of the ones that are happening over the next month or two. And we just have a lot of opportunities for both general ed and special education staff, for elective teachers, for ancillary support staff, and we have a couple of preschool GSRP sessions as well that's connected to special education. So I wanted to have kind of quick access. You can register for these within our course catalog on our Wayne Risa website through Learning Stream. So again, I just wanted to bring these to your attention if you have specific staff members that are looking for more special education, PD opportunities, whether they're special ed staff or general ed staff. We do offer a plethora of opportunities. So please sign up. The registration, believe for all of these are still open. And please let me know how else we can support your teams from our CS department. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kate. All right, everyone, thank you so much for your attention and engagement. The team provided lots of different information and updates. If you're like me, it's a lot to consume it all at once. So just remember, we'll share a link to the site where the information is housed. You can always go back. This is the time of year that we offer a point of view and an update on our fall data release in terms of a county-wide perspective. I know that each of you spent intense amount of time really looking at your district level data of the schools within your district, how students did, performed, what that means for the choices that you made in terms of things that you focused on, priorities, investments, and what that means in terms of your work going forward. And I also think it's really important to have a point of view on how we're doing collectively as a county. A lot of the things that we've talked about in the context of the whole meeting are initiatives that are designed to help us all move forward together in a positive way to increase outcomes for students throughout the county. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. Fair warning, it is my intention and the intention of both Cindy and Joe, you can go to the next slide, to move quite quickly through these slides. I'll give you sort of an overview. We're going to talk through 6 different areas. Accountability. How is all of this structured? I think some of you are quite familiar. Others of you, who might be more new to your role, some of this is helpful. Also, it changes a little bit each year, each cycle. And Cindy does a nice job of providing updates to that. We'll talk about 2025 state testing data, which includes MSTEP, PSAT, and SAT. We'll talk about read by grade 3, graduation rate, enrollment, and attendance data. Our goal is not to keep you here for forever. We know that you can always come back to the pictures and you can read them and interpret themselves. But if you haven't heard this yet, hopefully you'll find it interesting and helpful. If you've already been in a space where this information has been shared, you will not hurt our feelings if you step away. Totally understand. And just gratitude to everyone who created time within their schedule to join us today. All right, so with that, I'll toss it to Cindy. She's gonna talk to us about accountability first.
Thank you, Beth. So the majority of the data we examined today will feed directly into the accountability system. Next slide. As you know, the index system generates an overall score, 0 to 100, 100 in for each school in the components that we see in the table. So proficiency, growth, graduation rate, multilingual learner progress, assessment participation, and then school quality, student success. And then that's broken down into subcomponents. Within each of those components, there are state targets. Those state targets were revised last year, and those are linked there. The score in each component reflects how effectively the school meets that state target. And then each component is weighted with the greatest emphasis placed on proficiency and growth. You can see at 29% for proficiency, 34% growth, so over 60% of the index is that proficiency and growth. Next slide. From your school index, we have 3 school identification labels. We have CSI, ATS, and TSI. So your CSI is your comprehensive support and improvement. It's identified every 3 years. The next identification is this fall. We anticipate late November, early December. We don't have an actual release date yet. CSI has oversight by MDE. It is for the schools that are the lowest performing, and they have criteria to be identified. If their overall index is in the bottom 5% of the state, the bottom 5% cut. If a high school with a 4-year graduation rate is at 67% or less, if the school was a CSI or an ATS school in the last identification and they did not meet the exit criteria, they will be re-identified as CSI. For ATS, that's your additional targeted support. That label, that school identification focuses on your subgroup, your student group performance. That's identified every 6 years. The next identification is fall 2028, and it's oversight by MDE. That one, again, focuses on your subgroups in the bottom 25th percentile throughout the components. And then if you have subgroups with their overall index in the bottom 5% cut. The last identification is TSI, that's targeted support improvement. That's identified annually. The next identification is this fall, again with CSI, and that is oversight by the local district. That is if your student groups have their in the bottom 25th percentile cuts throughout the different components. Next slide. So in Wayne County, the last identification, we had 94 CSI schools identified. So the status this fall, we have about 48% or 45 schools that are eligible to exit this next round, this next identification in November, December, if they meet the criteria, if their overall score is above that bottom 5% cut, and they meet year 2 improvement requirements. So these schools have already met the graduation rate requirement, and they have already met year 1 improvement. So they've done some hefty work already. They just have to meet these last 2 requirements, and then they are eligible to exit. So we're kind of watching those 45 schools. 46%, about 43 of the CSI schools will be re-identified. They did not meet year 1 or the graduation rate requirement. And then 6 schools, 6.3% of CSI schools have closed. So that's our status this fall. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So from the CSI schools, partnership districts are formed, but not all CSI schools fall under the Office of Partnership Districts. Virtual schools, special education programs, alternative schools, those schools fall under the Office of Educational Supports. So it's really important that you're coding your teacher student data links, your MSDS, all of that coding is correct, so that you're coded correctly as a virtual or a special ed program or an alternative school, so that you go under OES and not partnership. So out of the 94 CSI schools, 49 of those CSI schools formed 22 partnership districts in Wayne County. That was 40% of the state. The status of those partnership districts, 3 of those have closed. 1 has been removed for virtual recoding. 8, 36% will be re-identified, again, for not meeting that exit criteria. And then 10 are eligible to exit. Again, we're watching those 2 criteria for exit. And then for ATS, the last identification, we had 28 schools that were identified. The next window for identification is not till fall of 2028, but MDE has implemented a potential early release. So this fall, 20 schools were identified that have met exit criteria early, and they have the potential to do an early release as long as their index is above that bottom 5%, they will be released. So that's 71.4% of the ATS schools. The other 8 will continue within the 6-year cycle. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. Over to you, Beth.
Thanks, Sydney. Yeah. So I'll just give, again, my intention is to move quite quickly through these slides, but want to give an overall county-wide perspective on how our students performed on MSTEP, PSAT, and SAT, ELA, and math. Next slide. There's gonna be a lot of next slides going on here. Here we go. Okay. This is a picture of ELA performance grades 3 through 11 for the past 3 years for Wayne County. You can see that students have improved year over year in nearly every grade level. In fact, consistently from last year to this year in all grades 4 through 11, so just not grade 3. 6th grade ELA jumped more than 3 points from 2024 to 2025 respectively. 8th grade students also posted strong gains. And the most significant growth we saw in this particular year was in grade 11, where SAT proficiency increased by more than 4 points. Next slide. Here we have a picture for you that speaks to pre-pandemic performance versus where we are today. And you can see in those grades that are green, you can see where we have exceeded pre-pandemic performance. Those that are not green, we're still working on reaching that milestone. Next slide. Uh-oh. There we go. This is a picture of how Wayne County, our aggregate performance is relative to the statewide aggregate performance in grades 3 through 11. One thing that is really important to point out is that we obviously have mentioned we showed increases in all grades but grade 3. And we outpaced the growth that the state performed in terms of their overall proficiency percentage improvement in 5 of 7 grades. So you can see, for example, in grade 4, where the state overall, that state trend line went down, Wayne County improved. Next slide. And this is a picture you may want to go back to later, but it's just a different picture of the sort of same data where we're looking at multiple years performance, the state's trend line, Wayne County's trend line, and you can see that we are closing the gap slowly, but over time between our aggregate performance, which is below the statewide average, and the statewide average. And you all know, because we're so large, as we improve, the state improves typically as well. Next slide. This is the picture by subgroup as reported by the state, and which is required for our index system. You can see that we do see improvement among subgroups, but obviously we have a lot of work to do with some of the students that we serve whose needs have not yet been met. Next slide. This is that same picture organized by subgroups for grade 8 PSAT. Next slide. SAT. You can see overall a similar picture. Moving on to math. This is the, back a slide. Thank you. This is the same picture we showed you for ELA, all grades 3 through 11, 3 years, Wayne County only. You can see 4th grade math proficiency rose nearly 2 points in this last year. 6th grade also improved nearly 2 points. And again, when you think of the size of our county and the number of students in the denominator, this is a significant number. More students are proficient this year than were last year. And again, the most notable gains came in 11th grade from 24 to 25, but we're still not back to the performance that we posted in 2023. Next slide. Obviously, we're not talking about this. We do have some additional pictures available to you through a link where we're looking at cohort data, but you can follow those trend lines on these charts, but we're also seeing many or most cohorts improving year over year. This is that Wayne County versus aggregate versus the state performance aggregate by grade level. And again, in this chart, you can see the grade levels. So green means it improved, whether it's Wayne County or the state. Red means it declined, but you can see, for example, in a year where in sixth grade, the state improved by 0.5 percentage point, Wayne County improved by nearly 2. So overall, we are improving or have increased larger increases in percent proficient year over year than the state is seeing, which is positive. Next slide. And again, this is that trend line. We're consistently lower than the statewide average, but we're continuing to make gains, meaning that our improvement in proficiency is more significant than the state's. Next slide. Same picture by subgroup for aggregate 3 through 7 M-STEP performance. Again, we have a lot of work to do as there are gaps that continue to exist among specific student subgroups. Next slide. This is the PSAT 8 math picture. Same thing. Again, this might be something that you look at and think about your district's performance and how that relates to countywide performance. Next slide. SAT math. Same picture. Next slide. Thank you. This is our science performance. In science, Wayne County students continued to make progress. 8th grade students rose 3 points in a single year. And 5th grade students, really that's relatively steady. It's not really an increase or decline, it's sort of the same, but above our 2022 performance level. So overall, we're seeing positive performance. We're not seeing that true in grade 11. We've had some rich conversations with different stakeholder groups regarding students' motivation in grade 11 and whether or not that assessment is meaningful to them. Obviously, we know that it's not a college entrance exam and it has no benefit to them in terms of, overall GPA or, so we're seeing lower participation rates overall in that assessment. And so I think that's one factor in terms of what we're seeing in performance. Next slide. Science performance, state and Wayne County. And I will say, sort of overall, what we're seeing is that in terms of proficiency improvement, we are posting larger gains year over year than the state, with the exception here of 5th grade science, which is an outlier. Next slide. This is our, those trend lines. And again, we kind of mirror what's happening statewide here in Wayne County. Next slide. Moving on to social studies. Obviously, you all, as academic leaders in this county, are well aware that the 2025 social studies assessment were changed to realign with the revised content standards, and there are new cut scores. So the state has, despite presenting the same picture we're presenting, which I think many of us are responsible to present to our boards, which is why we created it to begin with. They're really not comparable data sets. What we have said, next slide, is that one interesting thing is when you think about, we had previously made a transition to standards, but those standards are not reflected in the assessment. Now that the standards are reflected in the assessment, it's good to see that students overall are performing better. So when that assessment matches what is taught, we tend to see better outcomes. Next slide. And again, different cut scores, different assessment, not truly comparable. For me, I would consider this data set as a new baseline. Next slide. One of the things that we wanted to do was just talk about improvement over a 3-year period versus just 1 year, because sometimes we see that sort of up down. And so we might celebrate a great improvement, and the next year we're back to the prior year sort of even with, because of course we're looking at new cohorts of students as well. So here you can just see in terms of Wayne County districts, both LEAs and PSAs, all of us, over a 3-year period, the percentage of districts that had gains in proficiency in each of these different areas for ELA and mathematics. So we're sitting anywhere between 2/3 and 8/10 of the total county. Now that is not true in PSAT 8, and so that is something to think about. I know many of you are thinking very critically about algebra acceleration, and what that means related to PSAT and high school math performance. And there is some really interesting new research from NCTM out on that topic. So if that's something that you're considering as it relates to your data, we'd be happy to dig in with you. Next slide. This is just a picture of the state in Wayne County in terms of overall proficiency gains. And again, it's similar to what we've previously presented, where improvement is being made. Wayne County's improvement in proficiency gains across all areas is exceeding the state's performance. Next slide. And this is the math picture. Where we're seeing statewide declines over a 3-year period. Wayne County is experiencing that as well, but not quite as acutely. Next slide. We wanted to just share and celebrate some of our districts that have made significant progress in a 3-year period. We know that this takes great intention in terms of systems. For example, we've talked pretty critically, particularly in the context of our Wayne County literacy promise about having guaranteed and viable curriculum, having adequate instructional time, using really strong assessment metrics and data-driven decision making to meet students' needs, having the appropriate support for leaders and educators. And so this work takes time, it's intentional, and for it to be sustained over a 3-year period is to be celebrated. And so just want to lift the districts here, both LEAs and PSAs, who posted the strongest proficiency growth within that 3-year period. So I won't read them all out because it'll take me too long, but maybe everyone use an emoji. Let's celebrate every district here. And if you are one of them, feel all of the love and celebration of that hard work, because it takes real critical intention to get this kind of work done. Next slide. This is the same picture, but presenting to you PSAT 8 ELA in mathematics. These are the districts that posted the greatest gains over a 3-year period in proficiency. So again, congratulations. This isn't just 1-year improvement, it's across a 3-year period. And I will be the first one to share some excitement around that. Next slide. And this is our SAT grade 11 ELA and math. So you can see across each of these 3 slides, step 3 through 7 aggregate, PSAT and SAT, just a really strong intersection. And if one of these areas is your area for growth, I really encourage you to think about of these districts, a like population to you, and how you might learn from them in terms of the work that they have accomplished. Next slide. All right, with that, I will toss it back to Cindy for read by grade 3. Hope I did that fast enough. We're trying. I know it's a lot.
Thank you. As defined by the read by grade 3 law, students who score 1279 or below on the 3rd grade ELA M-STEP are identified as having a reading deficiency and require additional reading supports. You can see students who have a 1280 or higher, they meet the grade 3 reading requirement. So CEPI notified parents and guardians of all 3rd grade students, again, who had that 1279 or lower based on that 3rd grade 2025 M-STEP. Next slide, please. Thank you. So one change this year, in 2025, the threshold increased to 1279. That cut was up from 1271 in 2024. Because of that increase in the cut, that increased the number of students that are identified for intervention and support. So you can see here a jump 10% at the state and at the Wayne County level in the percent of students that are identified for needing support. So Wayne County went from 37.4% to 47.9%, and the state went from 26% to 36.5%. So that is third graders identified for needing support. Next slide. So if you look at that data and you break it down by our student groups and the percent that need support, the red here, that's the percent of students that were at 1279 or below, and the blue represents the students who are at 1280 and above, and they met that requirement. And then across the bottom, you have your student groups. So you can see the disparities among the student groups and that reading readiness in third grade. Your foster care, homelessness, students with disabilities all the way to the left. We have our all students somewhere in the middle, 47.9%. But again, those disparities in that third grade. Next slide. So the requirements with read by grade 3, again, not a lot of changes. Last year, they took out the retention component. A student is identified based on that cut 1279 or below. Parents and guardians are notified of the deficiency. The school must provide a targeted reading intervention. Progress monitoring is provided, and the communication with families has to be maintained regarding that reading intervention. So the IRIPs, they are not required for fourth grade. They are now only required based on read by grade 3 law pieces. They are only required for K through 3. So districts can move that IRIP into the fourth grade based on the intervention plan. And this is not the dyslexia law that's coming later with those pieces of the IRIP. This is just based on the read by grade 3 requirements. For K3, it is only required in K3. And next slide, please. And then I will turn it over to Joe, Dr. Musio.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, thank you, Cindy. So the graduation rate is collected in December for the previous year, and it's updated on the My School Data Portal in February. So again, we're always a year behind. Schools with a graduation rate of 67% or less can be labeled as CSI. And here are our targets for graduation: 4 years, 93%, 5 years, 95.7%, and 6 years, 96%. Next slide, Matt. Here is our 4-year graduation rate. We applied these to the Tri-County area, and even though we're increasing, we still lag behind Oakland, Macomb, and the state. But 44 of 70 Wayne County high schools exceeded the state's 4-year graduation rate, which is about 62%, so that's something to be proud of. Next slide. Here is our Wayne County 4-year graduation rate by student group. The groups with the greatest difference between 22-23 and 23-24 were 2 or more races, white and English learners, and we have the subgroups to the right there. Next slide. Here's our 5-year graduation rate. Again, we lag behind the other counties and state, but we are showing improvement. Next slide. And same with the 6-year graduation rate as well, too. We are showing a slight improvement, but we lag the other counties. Next slide. Here are top districts with the highest 4-year graduation rates. So this is something to celebrate. We have the 5 LEAs and 5 PSAs, so that's important. Matt, next slide. Here is our enrollment. So right now, Wayne County is at 260,856. And we've currently just surpassed the 2021-22 levels, which, was a concern about the pandemic. So 260,000 students. Next slide. Here is our enrollment by student group. So we can see that almost 2/3 of our children are economically disadvantaged, which is a proxy for poverty. And of interest here, African American white represent about 41% of our students. Next slide. And students with disabilities, we had a slight uptick from 12.8 to 13.1%, but we have a total of just over 16% of the state's total disabilities. Next slide. Here is our percentage of multilingual learners. Compared to the state, we have nearly double the amount of multilingual learners, and we have 37% of the state total of multilingual learners in Wayne County. Next slide. Here is our Wayne County attendance trends. So this is something to celebrate. Chronic absenteeism is operationally defined as missing 10% or more of instructional time. Since last year, we have seen almost a 3% reduction in chronic absenteeism. So when you look at the actual chronic absentee kids, this represents about 3,006 children. So this is something to be proud of. And again, 3% when applied to 260,000, that's a very, very important shift. Next slide. And again, too, we pretty much are above the state, and you can see the pattern is very similar. Next slide. And our daily attendance has increased from 88.2% to 89.24%, but closing the gap to the state. Next slide. And here's our chronically absent by student group. Again, African American, homeless, and economically disadvantaged are the largest differences there. Next slide. And chronically absent by grade, the students group with the biggest difference was kindergarten, and we give you all the grades on the right column there. Next slide. Top districts with the greatest reduction in chronic absenteeism. Again, something to celebrate. Here are 5 LEAs and 5 PSAs. So this is something, again, to give a shout out to. Next slide, Matt. And Beth, I'd like to turn back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So we've spoken to all of this throughout our presentation. I won't reiterate it. Next slide. You know, obviously we have a number of things that we feel really proud to do in collaboration and lead that we think are co-contributing to our county-wide success. And we are fiercely focused on a commitment for growth for our students. Next slide. And there are a number of funding sources that support this, some of which, you know, if I'm just being candid, were recently removed from the budget. But we continue, like you, I believe, to work hard to be creative and think about all the ways that we can leverage resources to continue to do the good work. Next slide. And then linked within this presentation that you'll have access to from our site is just a deeper fall data book, has pictures that we didn't include in our presentation. I know that's hard to believe with so many slides, but there are additional pictures. And if there's something that you're curious about and you're wondering in terms of countywide performance, that we can create those for you if that's helpful for you. So just reach out with anything you might need. And then I would just conclude, I wanted to share one additional thing with everyone. Next slide. And that is, you know, we have spoken about, does everyone see the Wayne County Literacy Promise on the screen? Okay, great, cool. We've talked about this in this space before, and we provided opportunity for input in this document, and that input that we received from multiple stakeholder groups, both through sort of like a focus structure and other ways, really helped to refine this document to reflect all of our work. In fact, it was through the input of individuals here and in other spaces that we added, for example, build authentic partnerships with families. That was not originally part of something in the initial draft. But we're beginning to present these to different audiences. And so, for example, next week, we'll present this to our LEA and PSA superintendents countywide. And essentially, we're looking for a commitment of every district throughout the county to sign on and commit to this being our countywide commitment on what we're doing on behalf of students in Wayne County. All of these are research-based. They are tied to and derived from our Wayne County Literacy Theory of Action. They reflect best practice, and they're things that we've all been deeply committed and working on. And we feel strongly that we need to come out united to say, yes, these are the things we're committed to do in the context of a commitment versus a theory of action. We have a lot of different stakeholder groups that are not us, who don't really understand our work and what we're doing. And so this gives us a way to speak to what we're doing. And then from this, we're going to really highlight, we're going to feature a series of stories about from promise to practice in terms of what is actually happening. How are people living this out in their districts and the impact it's having on students? And so your leaders will be invited for the opportunity to sign on. One example of the structure I can show you here is just, beginning with our local education agencies, the list of districts, their identified superintendents, and asking them to sign on. And we'll do that for all LEAs and PSAs throughout the county. And we think that the impact of this will be significant, particularly with the legislature and our community. And we're inspired by what resources it might bring forward to us, because we know that this is work you're all doing and committed to do. And we're behind you to support you with what you need to continue to make progress on these things. So that will be circulated in somehow I can, oh, here we go, stop share. Thanks. That will begin to be routed for signature in November. So we'll have the final presentation to LEA and PSA to superintendents next week. And then we'll be moving forward with that. Great. Any questions from anyone? Okay, well, we'll stick around just in case. I'm so grateful to each of you for your leadership, for taking time to be with us today, for all that you do. And you're awesome, and we'll see you soon.